Welcome to Mother, a Dungeons and Drag Queen segment where we discuss everything Dungeon Mother related. Today we are joined by the lovely Rick Vechel, also known as Vechel Fantasy, also known as the DM of the Oneders. Rick, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, lovely having you here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
of course.
We are joined today in Utrecht. It's the place where we live. Rick, where are you from?
I'm from Limburg, that's the southern part of the Netherlands, and there's a small village called Echt, and that's where I'm located.
Echt waar?
Echt waar.
Echt waar? Well, I'm going to edit in a beautiful medieval map of the Netherlands so our international viewers can see where Rick is from compared to us. Spoiler alert, it's a 2-hour drive, which means nothing to you.
But for us,
it is hell for us.
It is a lifetime of travel. Absolutely.
Rick, tell me a little bit about the Oneders, because you recently started streaming, if I'm correct.
Well, upcoming Tuesday will be the first live stream episode. We did a few tests the past month, and with a few creative individuals, we've been playing now for almost a year and a half. A year ago we had a TPK, and then the Oneders were created.
You decided to do something else.
Rick Vechel, did you already TPK your party?
Yes, level 3. Then again, it was not my mistake. It was a fight with a hag, and the bard had 2 HP left. The hag had 1 HP left. The first hit was the killing blow.
Oh well, I personally never killed a player before.
You've
Yet.
never?
Yet.
No. Well, but tell us a little bit about the premise. Tell us a little bit about your campaign. Where is it set?
We're in the Forgotten Realms. We start out with the last man of Delver, and we just used Faerun with a little bit of my own twist for the rest. They all made their characters with all backstories without really knowing what D&D had or could have in store for them. And I've just been building on that. And now recently they've angered a demon, and they're level 6 now, by the way. And now they're working their asses off just to get something to stop it in its tracks before it becomes too dangerous.
Yeah. There we go. But level 6 is a good level because I think in our campaign we're now, as we are trying to record level 3, you know, this is sort of when D&D begins, right? Level 3, level 6. Those are like, that's like D&D puberty.
Yeah, but you have the tiers of play. You have 1 to 5. You're a local hero.
Yeah.
You've beat a few goblins and you've chased away a boar, and now things are getting serious. You're going to the provinces, to more the global scale, more the national scale, and global scale comes in from level 11 until semi-gods level 20.
But they are rather new, your players, to D&D. Is that true then?
Yeah, one of them is only playing a year at the moment, so.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about the party dynamic? Because are you all friends in real life?
Yeah, most of us. At least now, especially since we've been playing for a year.
There's one guy. There's
always
one fucking guy.
There's always one guy. I've known most of them for a few years now. One I've known for 15 years. We just recently found out because of one kids' activity when we were teens.
That's so nice.
But most of them are musical teachers. That's always fun. Music teachers, sorry. We have one that's doing the Kunstbende project in Limburg. One is a teacher for music lessons in training, so next year he'll be done with school. And then we have me as a social worker, and we've just been put together and just making most of it.
So you got this crazy creative group, and what sort of is about this group that made you think like, okay, we gotta stream this?
I think it's because they burst out into song halfway through the episode, is that not?
That hasn't happened yet.
They're all wildly attractive.
We don't have any bards in this group, but it's really scary at first because I was expecting at least 2 bards in this new party. But we only had 1 bard. He died before the TPK, and we had a few one-shots during the Corona time. We had one of them playing a jar of mayonnaise.
Okay, now elaborate on that. Walk us through this.
I'm confused.
Yeah, we all were, and I still am. He did his performance check, and he was gonna tell us how it sounded. But I never heard the soundbite, so when I get it, I'll send it over.
Is this almost like when you apply for theater school that you sort of have to enact a teapot? And you have to sort of like emotionally, it was sort of like that, or was he an actual jar of mayonnaise?
No, he just acted out, sadly.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I emotionally feel like a jar of mayonnaise sometimes, so I can kind of relate to that.
I see that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So of course you guys have a lot of fun together. Where do you see this stream going in a few years? Do you have this? Are you just having fun, or do you have some achievements that you want to achieve?
We're just winging it at this moment in time. We were playing and we're like, Especially since I'm also having, I just created D in Dutch to also let the Dutch people know how it works out. And some of them have some trouble with the English language. So it's like, we're doing this in Dutch, so why not put on the cameras
There
on
we go.
and let people play along?
So this is interesting indeed for the readers, because this is for the listeners. This is a whole Dutch stream.
Yeah, which barely ever happened. I think you're the first even, right?
The first one I found, yes.
Oh, yes. Because this is kind of like the Critical Role effect as well, in a sense, where everything's in English.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what I found really
I think
interesting
everybody
about
wants
your
to make their
project.
breakthrough, and they think like, if I do it in English, it will probably not happen. What is for you the advantage of playing in Dutch?
It's your mother language. It's easier. You can easily find some words. You have to translate some terms, of course, or you just use your English one for a few class abilities. But it's a more natural tongue. And also when we're playing and we're having fun, and if they have to concentrate on the Dutch on talking the English part, you also notice that they'll lack a little bit more of their spontaneous acting. And I want to keep that. So
you're going for authenticity over sort of perhaps more of a commercial advantage you're going for.
If
Players just being able to be themselves.
Because then the project gets better, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
You guys are really creating a show of it. We just have our game, we put a camera, 2 webcams up, or saying it's a stream. So
We're in it for the money.
I don't think we're
Please
in it
give
for
us
the
money.
Yeah, please do.
preferably loads.
Yeah. Actually, elaborating on that, you created a show called D in Dutch, which expands a little bit more on explaining D&D in Dutch to potential D&D-ers, right?
Exactly. I've noticed a lot of people are just like, I can't really start with the English, it's hard, or the player's handbook is about 300 pages.
Yeah.
Can't we do it some more easier, and it's hard to get into? Like, I can do that. So I just asked a friend of mine to set up a camera in the library. And we just made the first 6 episodes last year, just to make sure that we have the basics. What is D&D? Who plays it? What adventures can you create? How does roleplay work? Is it something mandatory, or do you have to come in cosplay or anything?
Yeah.
No, I don't have to.
Definitely. And what I also sort of think about that is that, when we live in the Netherlands, and when we want to play D&D, you have to be sort of good in English because you need to know the rule book, which also create, in a sense, a class divide, because only sort of higher educated people or people fluent in a second language can sort of learn this game. Don't you think that's true? Looking at the people that we play with, they all have enjoyed at least college. And what you're doing, in a sense, is making these people, if you address it to people in their mother tongue, you open the game up to this whole sort of people that would struggle with English literacy.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who have done college who struggle with English as well in the Netherlands.
Yeah,
but
true.
Of course, we do have this strange thing in the Netherlands where everybody knows English, at least at some basic level.
degree, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but there is, of course, a large differentiation between those people.
Especially also when it comes with age. A lot of young people have been taught English in schools. For some adults, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
True, because we see a lot of young people now joining D&D, which is of course amazing. We've been playing, I think you for 6 years, and I also for around 6 or 7, and we're pretty young. But do you think that a lot of older people are also joining D&D now that it's becoming more mainstream, or do you think it's still like a young revolution?
I believe that D&D brings about, also the time is ripe to bring out new groups and also bring in new players. A few weeks ago I had someone mailing me that they wanted a Dutch adventure, so I rewrote one of mine, send it out. And it was to a mother for about 50 years old, and they wanted to do it at home with one uncle and a few kids and their spouses and anything like that.
Oh, that's so nice.
But they had read it with the English. So also the first game I was a DM through Skype. I helped them out the first part, how the rules work, how you can read the adventure part. And they've started playing now. Every family meeting is now also a D&D type of activity.
Oh, I wish my family was like that.
Oh my god, I wish... Bitch, here we go. There's no jab at my family though, but if...
Your family's amazing.
My father used to play the Pokemon trading card game with me when I was little, and I think that is the best gift he has given me in my life, because... Let me tell you a little bit something about little Margot. She didn't have nerdy friends. Well, she didn't have friends either, but that's not the point. That's not the point. My dad was the only one that I played the Pokemon trading card game with me, and that was my segue into geek culture. Playing through Pokemon trading card game, and now we play Magic the Gathering, also next to D&D. So, it's like what you said. I would have loved to have this sort of geeky family, that something that we could have bonded over.
Yeah. Only 2 days ago, we had an interview with somebody who was a mother who DM'd for her 8-year-old son, and that was like every week, and I was like, oh my god, I just wish I had this.
That is the luckiest kid in the world. If your mom is DMing for you,
that's awesome parenting.
And you're automatically going to turn out a good person as well.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Or afraid of Tarrasques. One of the two.
That also. I think that's true for everybody, though. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because another nice segue. This is also something that you do, right? Because you do a lot of kids D&D.
Yeah.
Oh, queen of segues.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you do this, how this is set up?
Well, it started 2 years ago. My regular job is being a coach for the cultural arts in the communities. And a few schools were struggling with how to promote reading among kids, because books don't give you applause like guitar or arts do. And of course, we have the screens everywhere with Netflix or other games that are easily accessible and much more fun because they do all the work. So the reading in the Netherlands is also taking quite a big decline if it comes to that. And there aren't really a lot of projects that kids are getting promoted to reading in a very animated way. So when the school asked me to work something out for them, I called up a lot of libraries. Do you have any projects that I could use, or just copy paste? And nobody really had anything except visited a writer or taking some writing classes, which is cool. And then I was back thinking, how did I do that? Because my grades in reading, also in the elementary school, were below average at best.
Well, like you said, books don't give applause.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I don't read.
You're illiterate, even, right?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. No, but it's very cool what you're saying about this this introduction of D&D into the classroom, and you have a very specific technique. We talked about it earlier about getting kids to read a book like that. So how do you use DMing to get them to read a book?
Well, I take the worlds that books are created in. For example, pirate tales have been around for centuries. Yeah. And every kid always says at least once, or with Carnival or any other festival, I want to be a pirate. So I just took an old map, made a pirate quest, and gave some kids the reins of their boat. I just said, there's a treasure over there, somebody has to get it, and I'm looking for a few heroes. So I have up to 8 kids in a group that are just going their piratey way. And just to get them into the immersion, into the world of pirate ships, and just also using their imagination, the same skill they also use when they read a book, for example, just to get them in that state of mind. And of course, I play with them for a part, and when they reach a treasure room, for example, my booklet is up. I don't have any pages more, so what books could help getting a pirate treasure? Oh, I know one, and just get the Sam Silver, for example, a pirate.
So you match them up, these books. Oh, that's so fun! I didn't really get it.
That's interesting.
I can't. Depending on the writer or the publisher, I can't use the books in an adventure game. Yeah. I have a few writers that have said, please take my book and make a D&D campaign out of it.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, that's something of the last few months now. So it's very.
Bless you, writers who do that. Bless you.
Send us your content, please.
Yes.
So, what you've told me before is that you then sometimes have the strategy that you take like a book and then you D&D or DM this kid's book, and then at like 70% of the story you sort of cut it off, and then you say, if you want to know the ending, go read the book.
Yes.
That's a cruel
but also
young
my
man.
favorite part.
That's a cruel but very effective tactic, I think.
Yeah, I even had a fight in a library because there were 3 kids and only 2 books. I had a physical fist fight in the library. And yeah,
sounds
that
like
is
something we would do.
This is the future liberals want. Kids fist fighting over books. Yeah, there we go.
And then I was talking to the librarian, and what am I hearing? And I'm just shoving each other against the bookcases. Like, I have to stop this, but also I'm kind of proud, so I'm not quite sure how to.
So was that the moment when you figured out you went too far?
No, it worked.
Oh,
so
there is a limit, people. There's a limit to this.
The kids were happy. I took them apart. I reserved another book. The next following day, all 3 had to pick up the book. They all 3 did. So
that must be so amazing, because that's the goal that you're setting out with that project, and then to feel like, oh, I have this power in my hand to let these these kids get so excited about these books.
Yeah, also for books that they normally wouldn't read. I had a book called Princesses of the Wonder Realm, and it's if there's a girly design, this was it. That glitters on it, that all the drawings and everything was very cut out to feelings and girls, and a very girly book.
We know we wrote it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Co-authored it.
And most of the book was also about the feelings for one of them they had for a boy.
Oh.
And in the end, there was a giant epic battle where they had to save their magical animals from a big ass squid. Awesome.
Yeah.
But I also took that book because one of the girls said, "It's an awesome book, you have to read it now." I had for 4 weeks, it glitters in all my bags. Just didn't get it out, still didn't get it out.
The curse.
But that epic battle that we set up, I just put a Playmobil pirate ship, put it on the table,
Above and beyond.
Yeah, everything set up, and even little kids and also male or female read it.
Yeah.
So even normal books that wouldn't pick up, it's too girly. I'm taking this home, it has a squid.
Yeah.
That's nice. So let's say a little bit on the topic of D&D with kids, because I think there are maybe a lot of viewers out there that would love to DM for their child or would like to do a community DM where people can bring their kids over. What is one of the, aside from the age and of course like the development curve, what is one of the biggest differences between kids players and adult players?
Oh, the most fun one is that if you give an adult a character sheet, they start reading it and starting to think about what they can do in a turn. If you give kids the same page, they don't really even react to it. They just want to read the story and just want to get their action going.
Oh, you're like thinking, just like this bitch. I never read my character sheet, but no.
Yeah, but kids are a lot more creative in a way that they're just shouting out what they want to do. Even if I have a family setting and they just watch a Star Wars movie, they're running lightsabers.
Yeah.
Sure, have fun. The same damage as a longsword, have fun. And just to have their imagination playing with how they want to look and how they want to react. That's the biggest difference, because adults are also a lot slower when playing. Yeah. Oh, it's my turn. What can I do? I have an action, a bonus action, reaction. And kids just like, I want to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
And just run over, do it, and see what happens next turn.
Yeah.
And where do you think we lose that quality? Because when I'm D&Ding, whether as a player or as a DM, I do feel a sense of performance pressure, and there's also this element of failure, saying if I'm not portraying my character correctly, or when do you think we sort of lose that childlike, not caring about it all?
I think when we're trying to identify ourselves, especially when it comes to puberty, you're trying to identify yourself, you want to be the best you. You also have to do that because there's some pressure to just be the best you that you can be. And then it also triggers the phenomenon power gamers. That usually happens when people go into puberty, because that's when they want to fuck shit up. That's when the turnaround comes.
I think that's politically also interesting, because of course we have a system very focused on efficiency, and you and me both say this, that we don't necessarily like Munchkin players, for example, but we both kind of are at the same time.
Just say what you want to say.
You're a power gamer. I'm as well. I'm not judging you. Yeah.
You're not wrong.
When I played D&D, I was 13 years old. A father, a friend of ours, he bought the game because he was into Warhammer. He said, "Oh, a new adventure game, how awesome. Oh, it doesn't have armies. Kids have fun." But most of us were group power gamers, so I've also just mostly been the least effective member of the party, usually the cleric. Just I'm here for healing, and my Warhammer is still brand new at level 6. But taking that into account, I do know all the power balances. And if you have a power game in your group, it is also a lot of fun to challenge them that way.
Yeah.
Well, I think indeed, sort of what you're saying, like as a DM, you sort of need to have like an ounce of power gaming inside you, right? Because in a sense, that's just game balancing. Yeah. Knowing how to break a game is also knowing how to fix a game, in a sense, right?
Yeah, of course.
Do you see a pattern of what kind of characters kids tend to make compared to adults?
It's usually what they've seen or read about recently. I have kids that have been midway through an adventure, want to change their outfits or change their class entirely just because they saw something else cool.
I can relate to this immensely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But then again, my system for D&D kids, I've taken D&D 5e and I've just taken a few parts of it, and the rest I've just chucked over the fence.
Yeah, can you tell a little bit about that? How you did that mechanically?
Well, there's a few things in D&D that matter most. One is the game master or dungeon master says what is happening. A player says, this is what I want to do. And a dice says how good it works or how miserably it fails.
Yeah.
And then you have 3 kinds of challenges: social interactions, exploration, and combat. That's the entire basic of D&D. And I've just taken that, just been building on top of that, depending on what the kids wanted to do. So now I have 6 roles. I have the fighter, I have the rogue, I have the wizard, I have the cleric, the bard, and the ranger. And those are loosely, just like in D&D, they're, especially the 5th edition, they're more like equals. And usually these kids' classes also don't go further than level 3 in a year's time, so they're very much balanced in that part. Some of them have their own cool stuff, like the wizard has a fireball, but then again, one of them was watching the Lego Masters thing and he wanted to do more with drones, for example. So now he just doesn't have a fireball one, no, now he has a drone that drops bombs. Works as well, it's the same mechanical part, only it sounds cooler.
That's
Sounds still
interesting.
pretty complicated for kids though, am I right? Or do you see that you filter out maybe the kids that are perhaps a little bit smarter? Do you think this is sort of accessible to all sort of learning curves?
It works from ages 6 and up, so...
Yeah.
Definitely.
And for the libraries, usually start at 8, because then also you have the right kind of books that you can write upon. Because books when people are 6, that's the 2nd grade, so it's not really that they're even reading at that school yet, but the adventure part works. So when they're 8, they're usually easy enough adaptable for this.
Right. So I sort of noticed this pattern. Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, I mean, I find this a little bit awkward to say because our dear Reddy is behind the camera, but this also sounds a bit like how we DM.
Not untrue. I mean, like we do. I mean, like there's the pattern, right? Of course, that we simplify a lot of D&D. I think we cut out initiative. We do average damage for everything in the show, so it makes the game go a lot quicker. Not to say that those are not good aspects of the game, because if you do kitchen D&D, like kitchen table D&D, then that is very funny. You play more the board game element, but for our show DMing, things just need to go quicker, and we need to have a combat done in 10 minutes. And
also for your audience, that they can still pitch in. If someone went to the toilet, that they're still coming back and, oh, something else has happened.
Yeah.
Because I think as a D&D watcher, you think you want to see that from our show, but I don't think in reality people want us to see roll d4s and...
No, exactly.
Well, and otherwise you'd have to build them in massive skill as well. But this is interesting, of course, because our shows last 2.5 hours, 2 hours, something like that. How long do these sessions with kids last, generally?
Usually I put them up for an hour, with an hour and a half at a maximum. For example, boss fights or anything especially rare or epic in that case.
And is that for their attention span, or?
Originally, yes, but I've also doing D&D children parties, and I can get them up to 3 hours into D&D, no problem.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ages 9 and up, though.
Because what you're saying indeed about the attention span, I can imagine playing with kids that, well, my attention span already is quite small. But for these kids, how do you have specific strategies to keep them occupied? Are there tricks?
Well, there are a few, but most of them is just bringing them into the narrative. If they have their own part to play and they can also adjust the narrative and something greatly can happen because they did something, that brings them right back in with a fresh attention span.
Oh.
And that's a very easy thing with creative kids to do.
It's so interesting because at the start of the Dungeon Master Guide, you of course have all these archetypes of players. So you're basically saying that kids are more often actors in that sense, or more role play focused than adults are.
There are some libraries where they're allowed to play out their actions because we just have the room, for example. We also have a library that's too small, and one was power sliding through the hallways, always knocking other people over. So we had to kind of bring that back to the table some more. But kids are fully up to that.
Yeah, and we've been looking at education, maybe writing like an educational packet through D&D package. And that is hard. There are a lot of restrictions on actually getting into elementary schools and doing D&D, because I can imagine like violence or like teaching combat, that's like a no-go, of course, going into elementary schools.
It really depends, because most of the kids are not as fragile as we might think if it comes to that. If it comes to do Minecraft, they're usually chopping off zombies.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they do the entire rest of the day.
Yeah.
So I don't think we really have to be that careful anymore about that. Especially seeing also the iPads, what they get from schools nowadays.
Yeah.
It's not like they only have non-violent games on that one.
Yeah, and that's also a good thing about D&D, right? Because there's little visualization except for what you do in your head.
Yeah.
The problem with, for example, putting like 6-year-old kids in front of Call of Duty is that's just a bit too graphic, but...
Yeah, exactly. Now you can just adjust also your narratively, how it works. You can just adjust it to the age that you're communicating with.
Yeah, and I can also imagine that it puts all this violence into a context, because as a DM, you have a role to put this violence into a context. So, and of course, this is what we were talking about in the conversation with Forever DM. There is this, there's these ethical questions that you run into when we approach violence in general, right? Because the act of violence in itself already brings so many moral questions with them.
Oh, really? Oh, I must have missed something.
All my violence is heavily
all day.
No, but I can imagine that it could contextualize it very much for kids.
Well, maybe a fun example for that. In one of the first games that I did in the library, I had a small girl attending, 8, 9 years old back then, and they had a street they had to cross, also with bringing in some rules of traffic, and they had to help someone who was getting past the
bullying.
Being bullied, exactly. And she went over across the street, just left, right, went over, and then said, "I want to push a bully in front of a car." I did not see that coming at all. But that's also how kids just saw something or just thought of something on
We're
the spot.
not advocating kids D&D like this.
It just happened only once, so that's pretty much okay. But that is something that could happen because they saw it somewhere or heard of it somewhere, or maybe something happened. Somebody rode a bike into a vehicle on the side of the road or something.
Definitely.
But then it's also very important just to bring up, okay, we pause the game for a bit. There's fiction, there's non-fiction.
Yeah.
Let's make it absolutely clear what we're doing over here and what we want to do. And also we want to act in this role.
Yeah.
Well,
that
for
must
example,
be
you can hurt monsters, but you can't hurt people, for example.
Yeah.
That's one of the rules that really came up very quickly. And they all agreed to that before continuing the game, and she had to restart her turn.
Yeah. And
so that's true, because this idea about sort of pushing the kid in front of a car, I mean, like, we all sort of have this sort of mind space, right, that we don't really share with other people. But apparently this was sort of already in her mind space. This is something that she could think of at her age. I mean, like, we underestimate kids a lot. I mean, like, they can have pretty violent thoughts. And this also gave it a room to address it in, saying, like, okay, why...
Yeah. That must be interesting, though, because that also means that as a DM for children, you need to be very on point, seeing where they're going with these things.
It takes more improvisational skills than with adult players. That's something that's, for example, if I'm DMing for a group of adults, I usually have 4 or 5 scenarios at the ready for what they could do. And usually they think of a few more, but that's usually within a point of reason. Kids, on the other hand, can go a full 360 the other way.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun, but it's also quite challenging.
Yeah.
It does add another layer of, how am I going to fix this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also regarding how you visualize, for example, combat for these kids things. If you make it too non-violent, or maybe something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, people get hurt there all the time. Doesn't look like it, though.
No, they're crashing through walls and they go like, ah!
Yeah, oh, now I'm fine.
Or they're flying away, just like Jesse and James in Pokemon. Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
Blasting off
But
again.
it might be that if you do that too often, and as a DM for children, then they might go like, oh, I push a person in front of a car. Because it means less than...
I can imagine if you narrate it in this sense of, in this cartoon space, then action and consequence don't really, they're approached differently. Differently.
So I can imagine that's a hard thing to do for DMs, for children as well. You have to keep that balance.
For the most part, yes, but there's also, if it comes to creating dungeon for kids, it's usually one map, it has a clear start and a clear goal.
Yeah.
And that also makes it a lot more easier for DMs to navigate what players could do in that map.
Yeah.
It's a lot less random, and you can also flavor it just by your narratively role.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you think, just like from an educational sense, what do you think that D&D can teach children that our current educational system might miss out on?
It helps with a few hard and a few soft skills. And as much as I would like to have the soft skills coming more from the home instead of from schools, because I think that schools are doing a lot, way too much if it comes to parenting kids than their parents should. But it helps a lot with strategical thinking, for example, creative decision making, but also a lot with, for example, empathy, or how to address someone, for example, or caring about each other, for example. One of the main rules is we go in this together, we have to come out in this together.
Yeah.
If one of your allies dies and you leave it alone, everyone has lost the game for that point.
Yeah. This is one of the most interesting things that we discussed with the Forever DM as well, where she said, especially now during the pandemic, is that children don't necessarily learn these social group skills at home. They learn that with other children, playing outside or at school mostly. And she said, like, but as if I DM for my child, then I can step into another role instead of me as a caretaker or as a mother in that sense, and then we can have that play where he can learn those things.
Yeah, exactly, it helps a lot. We also have a pilot now in a facility for mentally handicapped kids with very light handicap, but still with some autism, for example.
Yeah.
And this gives them a safe space to make errors, to just
go
into a store, completely blow it out of proportion, run away crying, but then have a safe space to return after, like, okay, that happened, what can we do next time?
Yeah.
But if you did that in a real store, it would be a lot more consequential for him than it would be now.
Of course. And I can imagine then, if you're saying that you are working with perhaps a little bit more of a group that needs a special attention when DMing, what kind of skill sets do you need as a DM, considering maybe one of the viewers wants to start this community project, and what kind of skills would you need if you have kids that need maybe a little bit more patience or attention?
Well, at least you have to have a lot of patience, because the games will go a lot slower than you'd ever hope for.
Oh, really?
My normal D&D kids games, for example, go a lot quicker than my adult games, because kids are more to the point. They get done, especially puzzles, they get it done in a way more record time than my adult players will ever do. But with this group, they can easily be distracted by a small detail and focus on that for an hour and a half easily. So a lot of patience is one of them. And second is just an open mind, just to let it go. Also, one of my first advice to any DM is the world goes on even if the players do nothing. That's one of the most easiest things to do, but something that a lot of DMs forget.
Hey babes! Before you continue watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our D&Drag Patreon, where you can help us develop this crazy show further.